Welcome to Ordinary Apocalypse Files. Tonight's recovered file is about a family that didn't fall apart loudly. They fell apart quietly, in perfect lighting, with polite voices and practiced smiles. They kept the house clean, they kept the schedule, they kept the "we're fine" tone, even when something inside them was already breaking. And if this kind of story hits close to home, do me a favor. Leave a like and subscribe. It helps this archive grow, and it keeps these recovered files from disappearing again. Stay with me until the end, because what they were hiding wasn't just a secret. A new file begins now. File 009, the family living one payment away from nowhere.
They looked normal. They smiled at neighbors. No one suspected they were drowning. The Kendricks lived in a house that pretended everything was fine. From the street, it appeared like any other home on Maple Ridge Drive, a two-story colonial with faded blue shutters, a lawn mowed just often enough to avoid complaints, a basketball hoop in the driveway that hadn't been used in months. Inside, the air felt different, thicker, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. If you're enjoying this channel, leave a like and subscribe. Help this project grow. At the end, I'll reveal every file stored here. Michael Kendrick sat at the kitchen table every Sunday night with a calculator, a laptop, and 3 different notebooks. He was 42 years old and had developed a facial expression that existed somewhere between concentration and panic. His wife, Jennifer, had stopped asking what he was doing. She already knew. He was performing the same ritual he'd performed every week for the past 18 months, trying to make the numbers work. The numbers never worked. They just got rearranged, postponed, strategically ignored. Bills were paid in order of consequence rather than due date. The mortgage came first and always. Then utilities because darkness and cold made poverty visible. Car payments because without transportation, Michael couldn't reach the job that barely kept them afloat. Insurance because one accident would finish them. Everything else became negotiable. Their daughter Emma was 14, their son Tyler was 11. Neither child understood the mathematics of their own existence, but both had learned to sense the tension that moved through the house like weather. They developed an instinct for it, knowing when to ask for things, knowing when to stay quiet, knowing that certain conversations made their mother's jaw tighten and their father disappear into his office for hours. Emma had wanted to join the debate team at school. The registration fee was $75. She'd mentioned it once, casually, at dinner. Her mother had smiled and said, "Let me check the budget, honey." 3 weeks passed. Emma never brought it up again. She'd learned that silence was a form of consideration, that not asking was a way of helping. Tyler wanted new cleats for soccer. His current pair had a split along the toe, and he'd started stuffing newspaper inside to make them last. He didn't tell anyone. One afternoon, Jennifer found the balled-up newspaper in his gym bag and stood in the laundry room holding it, staring at nothing, feeling something crack open inside her chest. She bought the cleats. Used from a thrift store 2 towns over, where no one would recognize her. $22. Tyler hugged her like she'd given him the world. She smiled and felt like a fraud. The house itself had become a monument to deferred maintenance. There was a strange sound in the walls, a scratching, skittering noise that appeared around midnight and lasted until dawn. Michael said it was probably squirrels in the attic. Jennifer said they should call an exterminator. Neither of them made the call. An exterminator cost money, and money meant choosing. Fix the wall noise or keep the heat on, fix the wall noise or buy groceries, fix the wall noise or make the credit card minimum payment. The heating system worked in zones. The living room stayed warm. The upstairs bedrooms fluctuated wildly. Some nights freezing, some nights fine. Emma had started sleeping in sweatpants and 2 layers of socks. Tyler dragged his comforter into his closet and slept there because it felt warmer, smaller, safer. When Jennifer discovered this, she didn't say anything. She just added an extra blanket to the closet floor and pretended not to notice. Michael worked in logistics for a regional distribution company. He'd been there for 9 years. His salary had increased twice in that time. Small raises that barely matched inflation and never caught up to the cost of living. He was good at his job, reliable. Quiet. The kind of employee who stayed late without being asked, who never complained, who made himself indispensable through sheer, relentless competence. He was also terrified. Every performance review felt like an execution date. Every corporate email made his stomach drop. Restructuring, optimization, efficiency improvements, the language of layoffs dressed up in business jargon. He'd watched 3 colleagues lose their jobs in the past year, each of them called into the HR office on a Friday afternoon, each of them walking out with a cardboard box and a severance package that wouldn't last 2 months. Jennifer worked part-time at a medical billing office, 28 hours a week, no benefits. She'd taken the job 5 years ago when Tyler started elementary school, thinking it would be temporary, something to help with expenses until Michael got promoted, until they paid down the debt, until things got easier. Things never got easier. The job became permanent by default, and she became an expert in billing codes, insurance claims, and the small humiliations of working just below the threshold for full-time employment. She was careful not to work more than 29 hours in any week. At 30 hours, the company would have to offer benefits. At 30 hours, she'd become expensive. She'd seen it happen to another woman in her department, someone who'd picked up extra shifts during a busy month and suddenly found her schedule cut to 15 hours the following month. The message was clear: stay small, stay part-time, stay replaceable. Money was the ghost that haunted every room. It was never discussed directly, but it shaped everything. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when the children entered. Phones were checked constantly, not for messages, but for account balances. The mail became a source of dread. Envelopes with transparent windows, official letterhead, payment due dates highlighted in red. Jennifer had developed a system. She collected the mail every day before anyone else could see it, sorted through it in her car, and brought only the safe items into the house: catalogs, advertisements, grocery store flyers. The bills went into a folder in the glove compartment. She handled them later alone in parking lots and during lunch breaks, making payments from her phone while sitting in her car, calculating which ones could wait and which ones couldn't. Michael had his own system. He tracked expenses in a spiral notebook he kept in his desk drawer at work. Every purchase, every transaction, logged in blue ink with obsessive precision. Coffee, $3.79. Gas, $42.15. Lunch, $8.50. He'd go back through the entries at night, replaying decisions, wondering which ones had been mistakes, which small indulgences had compounded into catastrophe. $3.79 for coffee. He could have made it at home. Saved maybe $3 a day, $15 a week, $60 a month. Over a year, that was $720. Enough for Emma's debate team and Tyler's cleats and the exterminator. Except it wasn't that simple, because those $3.79 also represented the only moment in his day when he felt like a person instead of a variable in an equation he couldn't solve. The breaking point almost came in October. Michael's car needed new brakes. The mechanic said it wasn't optional. The rotors were warped, the pads were gone, driving it was dangerous. The estimate was $850. Michael stared at the invoice and felt his vision narrow, felt his body go cold. $850. It might as well have been $8,000. It might as well have been $1 million. He told the mechanic he'd think about it. He drove home on bad brakes, the car shuddering every time he pressed the pedal, metal grinding against metal. Jennifer saw his face when he walked in and knew immediately. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just handed him a glass of water and waited. "The car," he said. "How much?" $850. She nodded. No dramatics. No tears. Just nodded like he'd told her the weather forecast. They'd been married for 16 years. They'd survived worse. They'd find a way. Finding a way meant calling her mother. Jennifer hated calling her mother for money, hated the sound of her own voice asking, hated the pause that followed, hated the careful neutrality in her mother's response. But they had no choice. Her mother wired $600. They put the rest on a credit card that was already close to maxed out. The brakes got fixed. The credit card balance climbed higher. The minimum payment increased. The cycle continued. Tyler got sick in November. Fever, cough, chest pain. Jennifer took him to urgent care because their family doctor had a 2-week wait for appointments, and because she was terrified it was pneumonia, terrified of waiting and watching it get worse. The urgent care visit cost $247 after insurance. The prescription was $68. Tyler recovered in 5 days. The bills took 3 months to pay off. Emma stopped eating lunch at school. She claimed she wasn't hungry, that she had a big breakfast, that she was saving up for something. Jennifer found out when the school counselor called, concerned that Emma had been seen giving away her lunch money to other students. Not giving it away, saving it, trying to help, trying to contribute to a crisis she could feel but couldn't name. Jennifer picked Emma up from school that day and drove to a park neither of them had been to before. They sat on a bench overlooking a pond where a few ducks paddled in lazy circles. Jennifer wanted to explain, wanted to say the right words that would make Emma understand without making her afraid, but the words wouldn't come. They sat in silence for a long time, and then Emma spoke. "Are we poor?" Jennifer's first instinct was to lie. To say no, of course not, everything's fine. But something in Emma's voice, the quiet directness of it, the lack of judgment, made her pause. "We're managing," Jennifer said. "It's tight, but we're managing." "Is that why you look sad all the time?" "I don't look sad all the time." "Yeah, you do. You and Dad. You both do." Jennifer felt something shift in her chest. She looked at her daughter, 14 years old, already carrying weights she shouldn't have to carry, already learning lessons about survival and scarcity and the slow erosion of hope. "Things are hard right now," Jennifer said. "They've been hard for a while. But that's not your job to fix. You're a kid. Your job is to be a kid. I'm trying to help." "I know, but you help by eating lunch. You help by asking for what you need. You help by being okay." Emma nodded, but didn't look convinced. They drove home in silence. That night, Jennifer found $73 in cash tucked into a greeting card on her pillow, Emma's savings, everything she'd collected over 2 months. Jennifer stood in the hallway holding the card and wept as quietly as possible so no one would hear. December arrived with its own special cruelty. The holidays, with their expectations of gifts and joy and abundance, felt like a performance they were too tired to deliver. Jennifer suggested they skip presents this year, frame it as a conscious choice, something meaningful rather than desperate. Michael agreed. They sat the kids down and explained. This year they'd focus on time together instead of things. Quality over quantity, presence over presence. Emma said, "Okay." Tyler said, "Okay." Neither of them complained. But Jennifer saw the way Tyler looked at the toy catalogs that came in the mail, the way Emma scrolled past images of her friends' holiday hauls on social media. They were trying so hard to be good, to be easy, to not make things worse. It was breaking her. Michael spent Christmas Eve in the garage, sitting in his car with the heat running, staring at his phone. The bank account showed $412. Rent was due in 7 days. That would take $950, which meant they'd be $538 short. He had a credit card with $300 of available credit. That left $238. He didn't know where it would come from. He sat there until his phone battery hit 15%, and the car started to feel less like shelter and more like a coffin. Jennifer found him there around midnight. She opened the passenger door and climbed in without speaking. They sat together in the cold car in the dark garage, and after a while Michael said, "I don't know what to do anymore." "I know. I've tried everything. I've cut everything. There's nothing left to cut." "I know. I'm so tired, Jen." She reached over and took his hand, held it tight. They sat like that until the car's automatic shut-off kicked in and the heat died. Then they went inside, climbed into bed, and lay awake in the dark, listening to the house settle, listening to the scratching in the walls, listening to their own breathing and wondering how much longer they could keep doing this. January brought no relief. The new year arrived with the same old problems, now compounded by holiday credit card bills. Michael picked up extra hours when he could, but overtime had been restricted, and side gigs required time and energy he no longer had. Jennifer asked about going full-time at work. Her supervisor said positions were frozen, maybe in the spring. Maybe. The fear became physical. Michael developed a twitch under his left eye. Jennifer started grinding her teeth at night. Emma's grades slipped. Tyler began having nightmares, nothing specific, just generalized anxiety dreams, where he was late or lost or failing some test he hadn't studied for. The pediatrician suggested therapy. Jennifer thanked her and didn't make the appointment. Therapy cost money. They stopped going out, stopped seeing friends. Social invitations were met with carefully worded declines. Busy with work, kids have activities, maybe next time. Next time never came. Their world contracted to the house, to work, to school, to the narrow routines that kept them moving forward. They became experts at appearing normal from a distance while slowly disintegrating up close. The isolation was its own kind of poverty. No one to talk to, no one who would understand. Their neighbors seemed fine. Everyone seemed fine. The other families on Maple Ridge Drive went on vacations, posted photos from restaurants, drove new cars. Maybe they were drowning too, just better at hiding it. Or maybe the Kendricks were the only ones failing at a game everyone else had figured out. Michael started having conversations in his head with people who weren't there. Imaginary arguments with his boss, with bill collectors, with the universe itself. Why us? What did we do wrong? We did everything right. Went to college, got jobs, got married, bought a house, had kids, followed the script. So why are we here? One busted appliance away from total collapse. There were no answers. Just the relentless forward march of days and bills and obligations. Just the constant mental arithmetic of survival. Just the knowledge that one bad month, one unexpected expense, one missed payment could start a cascade they'd never recover from. The house began to reflect their internal state. Dishes piled up. Laundry went unwashed. Dust accumulated on surfaces no one had the energy to clean. Not because they were lazy, but because maintenance, eaters of homes, of lives, of hope, requires bandwidth they no longer had. They were operating in survival mode, and survival mode doesn't include dusting. February was the worst. A winter storm knocked out power for 3 days. The pipes froze in the upstairs bathroom. When the thaw came, one of them burst. Water poured through the ceiling into the hallway, soaking insulation, ruining drywall, creating a problem that couldn't be ignored or postponed. The plumber gave them an estimate, $2,400. Michael and Jennifer stood in the water-damaged hallway and said nothing. There was nothing to say. They didn't have $2,400. They didn't have a quarter of that. The credit cards were maxed. The checking account was overdrawn. Her mother had already helped twice this year. They called the homeowner's insurance. The deductible was $1,000. Even if the insurance covered the rest, which wasn't guaranteed, they'd need to come up with $1,000 immediately. They didn't have it. They called the plumber back, asked if he could do the minimum to stop the leak, forget the rest. He said he could band-aid it for $800. They agreed. Michael borrowed the money from his brother. The call lasted 4 minutes. His brother asked no questions, just said he'd wire it. Michael thanked him and hung up, and felt a shame so profound he couldn't name it. He was 42 years old, borrowing money from his younger brother, unable to fix his own house, unable to provide for his own family. The psychological weight of it was crushing. He started having intrusive thoughts, dark, spiraling fantasies about disappearing, about how much his life insurance would pay out, about whether his family would be better off without him. He didn't want to die. He just wanted to stop feeling like this, wanted to stop being the one whose failure was bankrupting everyone he loved. Jennifer noticed. She always noticed. One night, after the kids were asleep, she found him in the bathroom, sitting on the floor with his back against the tub, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," she said. "There's nothing to say." "Mike." He looked up at her, and she saw it in his eyes. The desperation, the exhaustion, the edge of something dangerous. "I can't do this anymore," he said. I don't know how to keep doing this. She sat down next to him on the cold tile floor, took his hand, held on tight. "One day at a time," she said. "That's all we can do, one day at a time. What if one day it's not enough? Then we figure out the next thing. But you don't get to disappear on me. You hear me? You don't get to leave." He nodded, squeezed her hand. They sat there on the bathroom floor until the house went quiet and the world outside faded to darkness. And then they got up, went to bed, and prepared to face another day of the same impossible math. March arrived with false promises. The weather warmed slightly, light returned. But inside the Kendrick house winter remained permanent. The broken pipe had been temporarily fixed, but the ceiling damage lingered, a water stain spreading across the hallway like a bruise, a constant reminder of their inability to make things whole again. The children had become different versions of themselves. Emma moved through the house like a ghost, speaking only when spoken to, spending hours in her room with the door closed. She'd stopped talking about school, about friends, about anything that required enthusiasm or hope. Tyler had developed a stutter, nothing severe but noticeable. It appeared when he was anxious, which was most of the time. The pediatrician said it was developmental, probably temporary. Jennifer nodded and knew better. The psychological architecture of poverty isn't dramatic. It's cumulative. It's 1,000 small degradations that add up to a fundamental rewiring of how you see yourself and your place in the world. The Kendricks weren't starving. They had shelter. They had clothes. But they'd lost something more essential, the belief that effort mattered, that stability was possible, that the future could be different from the present. Michael stopped tracking expenses in his notebook. What was the point? The numbers never changed. They were always behind, always scrambling, always failing. He'd started taking longer routes home from work, driving through neighborhoods where houses had decorative shutters and landscaped yards and driveways with boats and RVs parked in them. He'd sit at red lights and stare at these homes and try to figure out what the people inside had done differently, what secret they knew that he didn't. Jennifer had started taking Tylenol PM every night. Not to sleep. She'd given up on real sleep months ago, but to turn off her brain for a few hours, to stop the constant calculations, the relentless mental inventory of debts and due dates and disasters waiting to happen. The pills gave her 5 or 6 hours of chemical unconsciousness. It wasn't rest. It was just time passing without her having to be present for it. They'd stopped having sex. It wasn't a decision. It just happened. Physical intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires safety. And they no longer felt safe anywhere, not even with each other. They'd lie in bed back to back, separated by a few inches that felt like miles, each of them awake and pretending to sleep so the other wouldn't have to carry the burden of conversation. The male situation had escalated. The friendly reminders had become urgent notices. The urgent notices had become final warnings. The final warnings had become letters from collection agencies with threatening language about legal action and credit reporting. Jennifer had stopped opening most of it. The folder in her glove compartment had become a folder in a cardboard box in the trunk, out of sight, temporarily out of mind. In early April, something shifted. Michael got a performance review at work. His supervisor, a tired woman in her 50s who'd been with the company for 23 years, called him into her office and closed the door. Michael's hands went cold. This was it, the layoff, the end. But she didn't fire him. She looked at him across her desk with something that might have been sympathy and said, "You're doing good work, Mike. You've been consistent, reliable. I'm giving you a raise." A raise, 3%, starting next pay period. It worked out to an extra $87 per paycheck before taxes. After taxes, maybe $65, $130 a month. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to slow the bleeding slightly. Michael thanked her, walked back to his desk, sat down and felt nothing, no relief, no gratitude, just a vague sense of how insufficient everything was. $130 a month wouldn't save them. It would just let them drown slightly slower. He told Jennifer that night. She nodded, said that was good. They stood in the kitchen and looked at each other, and for a moment Michael thought she might cry. Instead she laughed, a short, bitter sound that didn't contain any humor. "A raise," she said. "A fucking raise." He'd never heard her swear like that, never heard that edge in her voice. She turned away, gripping the counter, her shoulders shaking. He moved toward her, put a hand on her back, and she flinched. "Don't," she said. "Just don't." He stepped back, gave her space, watched her compose herself with visible effort. When she turned around, her face was smooth again, the mask back in place. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not okay. Nothing's okay." They stood there in the kitchen, in the house they were slowly losing, and acknowledged what they'd both known for months. They were failing. Not because they weren't trying. Not because they were lazy or stupid, or making bad choices. They were failing because the system required you to be perfect, and perfection was impossible. One medical emergency, one car accident, one unexpected bill. That's all it took. That's all it had ever taken. They'd been living on the edge for so long that the edge had become normal, and now they were discovering what happened when you finally slipped. Late April brought the inevitable. Michael opened the mailbox one afternoon and found an envelope from their mortgage lender. Not a statement. A letter, certified mail. He stood at the end of the driveway holding it, knowing what it said before he opened it. Notice of default. They were 63 days past due. If payment wasn't received within 30 days, foreclosure proceedings would begin. 30 days. They had 30 days to come up with $950 plus late fees, a total of $1,172, or they'd lose the house. Michael walked inside and handed Jennifer the letter without speaking. She read it standing at the kitchen counter, read it twice, then carefully folded it and placed it on the table. "Okay," she said. "Okay? We'll figure it out. We have to figure it out." But there was nothing left to figure out. They'd already borrowed from family. The credit cards were maxed. They had no savings, no assets, no options. They were out of moves. This was checkmate. Michael called his brother again. Got voicemail, called Jennifer's mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice wary before he even spoke. "Mum," Jennifer said, taking the phone from Michael, "we need help." There was a long pause, then, "How much?" $1,200. We're about to lose the house." Another pause. Jennifer could hear her mother breathing, could feel the judgment even through the silence. "Jennifer, I can't keep doing this." "I know. This is the 4th time this year." "I know. I'm sorry." "I don't know what else to do. I don't know who else to ask. What about Michael's family?" "We've asked. Everyone's tapped out." "Mom, please. We have 2 kids. We need this." The silence stretched. Jennifer closed her eyes and waited for the verdict. "I can send $800, her mother finally said. "That's all I have available right now." $800. Not enough, but something. Jennifer thanked her and hung up and told Michael. They needed 400 more. Where would they get 400 more? Tyler's birthday was in 2 weeks. They'd planned to take him to a movie, maybe dinner at his favorite restaurant. Budget-friendly options, but still. That money could go toward the mortgage instead. Tyler would understand. He always understood. Emma had a field trip coming up. $70. They could tell her she couldn't go. She'd be disappointed, but she'd survive. $70 closer to saving the house. This was the math now. Birthday celebrations or eviction, school experiences or homelessness. They were cannibalizing their children's childhoods to keep a roof over their heads, and even that might not be enough. Jennifer went to work the next day and did something she'd never done. She asked her supervisor if she could pick up more hours, go full-time, get benefits. Her supervisor looked uncomfortable. "I wish I could," she said. "But you know the policy. We're not hiring full-time right now. I've been here 5 years. I'm reliable. I'm good at my job. I know, and you are, but it's a corporate decision. It's above my pay grade. Jennifer nodded, went back to her desk, sat there staring at her computer screen and feeling something harden inside her chest. They wanted her labor but not her humanity. They wanted her available but not committed to. They wanted her desperate enough to accept part-time wages with no security, no benefits, no future. She finished her shift, clocked out, and drove to a check-cashing place she'd passed 100 times but never entered, the kind of place with bulletproof glass and security cameras and interest rates that should be illegal. She took out a payday loan, $350, due back in 2 weeks with $112 in fees. Predatory, exploitative, necessary. Combined with her mother's $800, they now had $1,150, still short, but close. Michael sold his laptop, the one he'd bought 6 years ago for work projects, now obsolete but functional. Got $120 from a pawn shop. Enough. They made the mortgage payment. Avoided foreclosure. For now. But the payday loan was due in 2 weeks, and Jennifer had no idea where that money would come from. They'd bought themselves 30 days by selling the next 30 days. The cycle was infinite. There was no winning. There was only temporary survival. Tyler's birthday came. They didn't go to the movies, didn't go to dinner. Jennifer baked a cake from a box mix. They sang happy birthday around the kitchen table, and Tyler blew out 11 candles and smiled and said thank you, and Jennifer saw the effort it took him to smile, saw the way he was performing happiness for their benefit. Later, when the kids were in bed, Jennifer found Michael in the garage again, not in the car this time. Standing in the middle of the space, looking at the accumulated junk of their lives, broken furniture, boxes of old clothes, toys the kids had outgrown, stuff they'd kept meaning to sell, to donate, to deal with, remnants of a time when they'd had the energy for projects and plans. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Thinking." "About what?" He turned to look at her. "About how we got here. About all the little decisions that added up to this. About whether it was my fault." "It's not your fault." "Whose fault is it then? Someone has to be responsible." "It's the system," she said. "It's the fucking system. It's designed like this. You're supposed to feel like a failure. That's how they keep you desperate. That's how they keep you working for nothing." He shook his head. "That sounds like an excuse." "It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. We're not failing. We're being failed. Feels the same from here." They stood in the garage surrounded by their discarded lives and didn't know what else to say. Eventually they went inside, went to bed, lay awake until dawn. The payday loan came due. Jennifer didn't have the money, called the company, asked for an extension. They agreed for another fee. The debt grew, the timeline extended, the trap closed tighter. May arrived with heat and humidity and a sense of approaching collapse. The air conditioning in the house wasn't working right. It ran constantly but barely cooled anything. Michael looked at it, saw it would need repairs, and decided to live with the heat. What was one more discomfort? Emma came home from school one afternoon and found her mother sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a pile of unopened mail. Jennifer didn't look up when Emma entered, didn't seem to register her presence. Emma stood in the doorway watching, and for the first time in her 14 years she saw her mother as fragile, as breakable, as someone who might not have all the answers. "Mum?" Jennifer looked up, startled. "Hey, honey, I didn't hear you come in. Are you okay?" "Yeah, just tired." Emma moved closer, looked at the mail scattered across the table. Bills, notices, demands. She understood more than her parents realized. "Mum, what happens if we lose the house?" Jennifer went still. "We're not losing the house." "But what if we do?" "We're not. We'll figure it out." "But what if—" "Emma!" Jennifer's voice was sharp. "We're not losing the house, okay? Can you trust me on that?" Emma nodded, backed away, went upstairs to her room and closed the door and sat on her bed and felt the weight of secrets she wasn't supposed to know pressing down on her chest. Her parents were lying. They'd been lying for a long time. And Emma didn't know if she was supposed to pretend not to notice or if she was supposed to help, or if there was anything she could do at all. Downstairs, Jennifer put her head in her hands and cried. Not loud, theatrical sobs, just quiet, defeated tears that came from a place beyond exhaustion. She cried until there was nothing left, then washed her face in the kitchen sink and started making dinner. Because that's what you did. You kept moving. You kept performing normalcy until normalcy became real again, or until it didn't matter anymore. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late May. Michael got an email at work. Subject line, Organization Update. He opened it with the cold certainty of knowing what it would say. Restructuring, workforce reduction. His department was being consolidated. His position was being eliminated, effective in 2 weeks. Severance package included 4 weeks of pay, health insurance through the end of the month, job placement assistance. He read the email 3 times, felt nothing. No panic, no fear, just a distant, abstract thought. So, this is how it ends. He finished his shift, drove home, pulled into the driveway and sat in the car until the engine cooled and the sun dropped below the houses across the street. When he finally walked inside, Jennifer knew immediately. She'd been expecting this call for months, maybe years. When? She asked. 2 weeks. She nodded, sat down at the kitchen table. Michael stood near the door, unable to move further into the house, feeling like an intruder in his own life. "We'll file for bankruptcy," Jennifer said. Her voice was steady, factual, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized long ago. "We'll lose the house. We'll move somewhere cheaper. I'll look for full-time work. You'll find something. We'll start over." "Start over where? With what?" "I don't know, but we'll figure it out." "You keep saying that. We'll figure it out. But we never do. We just keep failing in different ways." "Then we'll fail until we don't. What else is there?" He looked at his wife, this woman he'd been with for 16 years, this partner in survival, and saw that she meant it. She would keep going. She would keep trying. Not because she believed they'd succeed, but because she didn't know how to do anything else. That night they told the children, not the details, just the basics. Dad's job was ending. They'd need to make some changes, maybe move. Things would be different for a while. Emma and Tyler sat on the couch and listened and nodded and asked no questions. They'd been trained for this moment, trained to be resilient, flexible, understanding, trained to absorb their parents' failures without complaint. After the kids went to bed, Michael and Jennifer sat together on the back porch. The yard was overgrown, the fence was sagging, the house was falling apart around them, and they no longer had the means or the will to stop it. "I'm sorry," Michael said. "For what?" "For not being enough, for not providing, for failing you and the kids." Jennifer reached over and took his hand, squeezed it hard. "You didn't fail us. The world failed us. The system failed us. But we're still here. We're still together. That counts for something. Does it?" "It has to." They sat in silence as darkness settled over the neighborhood. Lights came on in other houses. Through windows, they could see families moving through their evening routines, dinner, TV, homework, bedtime. Lives that looked normal. Lives that maybe were normal, or maybe were just as desperate and barely holding on. The Kendricks had been one payment away from nowhere for so long that they'd stopped seeing the edge. Now they were stepping off it, and there was no way to know what waited below. Maybe nothing. Maybe something worse than nothing. Maybe somehow a way forward. But that night, sitting on their broken porch in their dying house, they didn't have answers. They only had each other, and 2 sleeping children upstairs who trusted them to make everything okay, and the terrible knowledge that trust might not be enough. Jennifer leaned against Michael's shoulder. He put his arm around her. They stayed like that until the mosquitoes drove them inside, until the weight of another day forced them toward sleep, until morning arrived with its familiar demands and impossible math. They were living one payment away from nowhere, and now, finally, they were about to discover what nowhere looked like. This is File 741 from the Ordinary Apocalypse Files, a record of the American dream in decline, of families crushed by systems designed to extract rather than support, of people who did everything right and still ended up wrong. A testament to the quiet violence of poverty, the administrative cruelty of collapse, the way everything can disappear not with fire or flood, but with forms and fees and final notices. If this story resonated with you, please support the channel by subscribing and tell me where you're watching from. Your comment helps decide which forgotten file we restore next, and believe me, the next one goes even deeper.